What about our taxation system? So complex. There is no one who can possibly comply with every jot and tittle of our tax. If I wanted to get you or you, I could get you on a tax issue. That doesn't make any sense. What we need to do is come up with something that's simple. And when I pick up my Bible, you know what I see? I see the fairest individual in the universe, God, and He's given us a system. It's called tithe. Now, we don't necessarily have to do it 10%, but it's principle. He didn't say, if your crops fail, don't give me any tithes. He didn't say, if you have a bumper crop, give me triple tithes. So there must be something inherently fair about proportionality. You make $10 billion, you put in $1 billion. You make $10, you put in $1. Of course, you got to get rid of the loopholes. Now, some people say, well, that's not fair because it doesn't hurt the guy who made $10 billion as much as the guy who made 10. Where does it say you have to hurt the guy? He just put $1 billion in the pot. We don't need to hurt him. It's that kind of thinking. It's that kind of thinking that has resulted in 602 banks in the Cayman Islands. That money needs to be back here, building our infrastructure and creating jobs. And we're smart enough to figure out how to do that. $18.4 trillion national debt. I mean, that is a ridiculous amount of money. And just to put it in perspective, if you tried to pay that back at a rate of $10 million a day, 365 days a year, it would take you over 5,000 years. And that's what we're putting on the backs of our children and our grandchildren. But that's the good news. That's the good news. Because if somebody gave us a check today for $18.4 trillion and we paid it off, some people would be dancing in the streets, we're debt-free. Wrong. Because there is something called the fiscal gap. Make sure you read about that when you get home tonight. The fiscal gap. See, that is the unfunded liabilities owed by our government, which we don't put on the books, by the way. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, departmental programs, all these things unfunded, versus the revenues that are expected from taxes and other things. The two numbers should align. They should be roughly the same as it is in your home, in terms of your checkbook. But when they don't align, there's a gap. That's the fiscal gap. Today, it sits at $211 trillion. That is a staggering number. It is unsustainable. The only reason we can sustain it to the degree that we do is because our currency is the reserve currency of the world, which gives us the right to print money. That's a privilege that generally goes with the #1 economy in the world, which ours was from the 1870s until last year when China took over that spot. There is already a movement afoot to remove our money as the reserve currency of the world. What will happen with that level of debt? Think about it. It'll make the Great Depression look like a walk in the park. And therefore, we have to be smart enough to do something about it before that happens. And we can do something about it before it happens. But first, we must acknowledge that is a problem. The reason you don't hear that from politicians is because it's so scary and they want to be reelected. But since I'm not a politician, I can tell you, this is scary. It's scary stuff. And I 100% believe that there's something that we can do about it, because there are others who have done things about it, like Italy. They had to raise the retirement age and cut the retirement pensions by 40%, but they did it, and it put them back on the right course. But I can tell you, the longer you allow it to grow, the deeper the pain, the more difficult it will be to fix it. And we do have the ability to fix it. We have the most powerful and dynamic
economic engine the world has ever seen in this country. All we have to do is let it loose and create an environment that encourages entrepreneurial risk-taking and capital investment. We got a lot of money sitting on the sidelines waiting for the right kind of environment, and it will take off. And we can give it a jump start by just doing some intelligent things. For instance, there's over $2 trillion sitting overseas because American corporations don't want to bring it back because we have the highest corporate tax rates in the developed world. Why would they bring it back? You know, in my days on the Kellogg board, Costco board, I remember many times us sitting around the board tables talking about what are we going to do with this money overseas? Because bringing it back doesn't make any sense and having it taxed at 35%. Well, here's how we get a real good stimulus. Remember the big stimulus they were talking about at the beginning of the Obama administration that cost the taxpayers $1 trillion and nobody knows what happened to it? Well, I'm not talking about that kind of stimulus. I'm talking about a real stimulus that cost us not one penny by a 6-month hiatus on corporate taxes to allow that money to be brought back into this country. And the only stipulation that I would make is that 10% of it had to be utilized to create jobs for people who are unemployed and on welfare and job research. That kind of thing would make a huge difference and get things moving in the right direction. And it also goes back to something I think is so important for us as a society. We must learn to invest in each other. And, you know, you look at Muhammad Yunus, who won the Nobel Prize in 2006 for his micro-lending program, lifted millions of people out of poverty in that part of the world, Bangladesh. And 97+% of those people have paid those loans back. Think about what that could do in this country if we learn how to invest in our people, because what we want is programs that allow people to crawl out of the hole of dependency and climb the ladder of American success and become part of the fabric of America.